So Donald Trump is very worried about the attention that the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, is going to get this week. And one of the things they're doing is having campaign advisors kind of manage expectations. Trump campaign advisors are floating the idea that Joe Biden might get an 8 to 10 point bump this week from the DNC. Now, that's extremely unlikely, but the idea is if they say Biden could get 8 to 10, when Biden gets 3 or 4, which is typical from a convention, they can say, oh, no, Biden underperformed. Nobody likes him. We expected him to get 8 to 10 points, but he only got 3 or 4. So they're doing that. Trump's flying to multiple cities this week to do rally-like events, which we'll be covering separately, so I won't spend a ton of time on that right now. And in addition to this, Donald Trump is also doing a bunch of interviews. He's doing a bunch of press, and he started off the week on Fox and Friends again, and it went really badly. Before we start with the politics, I want to start with the strangest moment. Donald Trump's younger brother, Robert Trump, tragically passed away over the weekend in his early 70s. Trump, of course, struggles to show any emotion or human connection. Asked about it, Trump says, they say Robert was my best friend, which is really weird language to use about your supposed best friend and brother. Take a look at this bizarre video.
Hey, listen, a lot of people have been thinking about you and your family over the weekend. I know you were able to get to the hospital before your brother Robert died here in New York City. We are so sorry for your loss.
Well, I appreciate it. It was not a great weekend. It's very hard. You knew it was going to happen, but still, when it happens, it's a very tough thing. He was a great guy. He was a tremendous guy. He was my friend. I guess they say best friend, and that's true. And, losing him, not easy.
That is really, really strange language. I guess they say he was my best friend, and I guess that's true. What I think is that the statement that was put out by the White House quoting Trump saying he was my best friend, Trump didn't really write it, and Trump didn't really say it. So when Trump says they say he was my best friend, he really means the people who wrote the statement attributing that quote to me, they said he was my best friend. And I guess he sort of was. And then lastly, Trump is asked again about his late brother, Robert Trump. And Trump's sort of eulogy was about Robert Trump wasn't jealous of my success. And he thought I was a great president. Like, it's all about Trump, if you can believe that.
Most loyal people. There was no jealousy. A lot of times in families, I hate to say it, but there's jealousy, and especially among children and among children that are competitive children. Because he was very competitive. There was not an ounce of jealousy. He'd go around talking about how great this is for the country, and it's so incredible. And he was my biggest fan. People would tell me all the time, I spoke to your brother, and your brother was so thrilled and so thrilled at what was happening. And what was happening for the country was he was so angry with China because of what happened where the plague came in and they shouldn't have allowed it to happen. They could have stopped it. He was so upset by that. He couldn't, more than people would be upset. A lot of people have already forgotten, and you can't forget. But he was a fantastic guy.
Well, we're very sorry for your loss. And
well, thanks.
Asked about his brother, who died 2 days earlier, Trump says he was loyal to me. He wasn't jealous of all of my great success. He was mad at China because of the plague, and he thought I was doing a great job. This is not a person with normal emotion or with normal emotional connections to others. So that's out of the way. Let's now get into the political stuff. Trump again just insisting everything's fine with the virus, and says without his border wall, which Mexico was going to pay for but didn't, and which he was going to build across the entire U.S.-Mexico border, but didn't. He says without that border wall, things would be much worse, which is ridiculous. Take a look.
Border wall. But can I ask you something about New York
City?
City?
Well, no, then you shouldn't let it be in office, because we would have right now the plague coming in. Like, those 280 miles I built have stopped like hundreds of thousands of people. Mexico is heavy COVID territory. They're highly infected. I built the wall. And that wall has stopped people from coming in. If she said that, and I know Sleepy Joe said it, he said, we should stop the wall, and I might even tear down the wall. He wants to tear down a wall that's the best border wall ever built in terms of the success of it.
So you really hear that manic energy from Trump shot out of a cannon, as I say. And to add some facts to this, Trump says if it weren't for his 280 miles of wall, which is like nothing, by the way, we would have hundreds of thousands of additional cases coming in from Mexico. The numbers just don't bear this out. Number one, in total cases, Mexico has 10% of the cases that we do. Now, Mexico has fewer people. That's true. So per capita, the U.S. is 8th in cases and Mexico is 57th. That's per capita. Now, that can depend on testing. Well, in the U.S., we are 10th in deaths per capita. Mexico is 13th in deaths per capita. So it's a complete fantasy world. Fox and Friends allows it completely uncritically. Then Trump starts to insist that the world is calling him because he's so good at dealing with Turkish President Erdogan. Nobody knows how to deal with Erdogan other than Trump. Trump tooting his own horn here. Take a look.
Called me up. They need help with Turkey. The heads of countries last week, they called me up. Could you call Erdogan? I said, why? You're the only one that he'll listen to. He doesn't listen to us. You're the only one. I said, is that because of the United States? He says, no, that's because of you. That's because of your personality. You're the only one that he will listen to.
What about...
And you know what? I don't like saying this publicly, but it happens to be true. I get along with him, and he listens. And
is this maybe the most narcissistic thing that we've heard Donald Trump say? Then Trump compares the Taliban to the hosts of Fox and Friends interviewing him in this interview. This is weird.
Reconstituting in Afghanistan, though.
And you couldn't, if you look at her issues, you couldn't be more different.
Well, then I'll take them out, Brian. If they're reconstituting, I'll take them out. But we had at one point more than 100,000 soldiers. It's ridiculous. And we're ready to do whatever we have to do. We're dealing with the Taliban. I said, look, let me tell you something. And I've dealt with them directly. These are tough people. They're like you people. Maybe not that tough. But you know what? These are tough people. I said, look, if you play games, we're going to come and we're going to hit you harder than any country in the history of the world has ever been hit.
I guess maybe for Trump, this counts as adopting a sense of humor. I don't even know what's going on. Trump continues to be unable to pronounce Kamala Harris's name correctly. Now, that may not change. While he continues to allude to the Joe Biden dementia stuff, he still can't say Kamala's name.
Maybe people are going to feel sorry for him and maybe it wouldn't, but our country is too important for that. You're dealing with people that are very sharp. You're dealing with world-class chess players in the leaders of these countries. I know them all. We do very well with all of them. Erdogan of Turkey, all of them. You can't have a guy that's shot. You can't have a guy that doesn't know where he is. You can't have a guy that's afraid to leave his basement because he can't speak any longer. And by the way, in his best day, he wasn't good. You know that. He was not the guy. But we're now talking about a bad time. And you can't do that. You can't feel sorry for him and vote for him. And because if that means then the Kamala Harrises are going to take over, and she's a disaster. Look at her positions on everything.
Kamala, of course, is a fictional drug in the series Battlestar Galactica. Joe Biden's running mate is Kamala Harris. Then Trump is asked about people claiming that he might not leave office if he loses in November. And what's amazing about this is Trump doesn't deny it. He's asked, well, what about the people saying you're not going to leave in November? He just bashes Hillary. Hillary's not even the person he's running against this time around.
Mr. President, your reaction?
Well, the first thing I think of is crooked Hillary Clinton when during one of the debates she asked whether or not I would leave office. Would I accept the results of the election? Do you remember, would you accept the results? Mm-hmm. And I gave her a decent answer. And the problem is she didn't accept it. She went crazy. She's still going crazy. I mean, she's gone nuts. And so have they. I mean, they call it Trump derangement syndrome. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's certainly close. I go by the election. Now, with that being said, I have to tell you that if you go with this universal mail-in where you send millions of votes, in California, tens of millions of ballots being sent to everybody and their dogs, okay? Right. The dogs are getting them, okay?
Not exactly inspiring confidence that Donald Trump will leave peacefully. Again, I believe he will leave, but I believe he will do it if he loses by claiming it was rigged, possibly catalyzing and coalescing his supporters to real world violence out in the streets. I think it could get very, very ugly. And we need to be prepared for that as much as we need to be prepared for the voter suppression and everything else that is going on. Case in point, the post office now says there are tens of millions of ballots at risk, and that's what I want to talk about next. If you love feeding your intellectual curiosity, but you're always struggling to find the time, check out one of my all-time favorite apps called Blinkist. Blinkist lets you consume an entire book on your way home from work. They take thousands of popular nonfiction books, condense each one into text or audio that you can get through in just 15 minutes, and you get all of the important core ideas and information from that book. It's perfect if you don't have enough time to do all the reading you want to do, or if you just want to sample a book before you buy the entire thing. I recently read A Brief History of Time, of course, by the great Stephen Hawking. This is a book that I have been aware of for so long, and other things got in the way, and it was fantastic to check it out on Blinkist. Blinkist has books on politics, philosophy, science. They have 27 different nonfiction categories, and a subscription is only about $8 a month, and you get the entire library. But you can try it totally free and get 25% off a subscription when you go to Blinkist.com/Pacman. I've put the link right underneath this video.